Welcome to a world where particles, vibrations, and light collide, a place where leading industry experts and healers come together to discuss controversial topics that will challenge your beliefs and expand your mind. From quantum physics to metaphysics, no topic is off limits, but this is not your typical podcast.
I'd like to know if you could give us some pointers on dealing with the triggers.
Well, remember, you can't get triggered unless you have a belief that you can be triggered, right? The triggers happen when we feel like we have no control. The triggers happen when we feel like we're a victim. The triggers happen when we feel like somebody's in our space, right? Those are all triggers. And so if you understand, if you're able to stay in the space of, it's an interesting thought you've got.
It's a show guaranteed to make you question your assumptions and push you to expand your horizons. For those who are already fascinated or passionate about the work of Patti Conklin, this show will give you an inside look into the mind of one of the industry's most renowned figures in vibrational mediation. With over 28 years of experience and a long list of big-name collaborations, Patti's insights and perspectives will inspire and challenge even the most seasoned practitioners. And if you're the skeptic who doesn't believe in vibrational mediation, this show is for you. Healers, doctors, and scientists are just a few of the professions represented by our fascinating visitors that bring their unique perspective to every episode. Join us on this journey into the world of healing within and adventure inside. Our mission is to inspire, challenge, and enlighten our audience with thought-provoking conversations and fascinating guests from a wide range of fields who can shed new light on important issues facing society today. Join us for each episode if you're ready to explore and learn about the latest developments at the intersection of cutting-edge science, spirituality, and self-improvement. Enter a world where waves, particles, and light all meet. Enter the world of healing within and adventure inside.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Patti Conklin, and you're watching an episode of Healing Within and Adventure Inside. We're going to be talking about today, we're coming up on our 27th year for the company, various names, me, and she has done us a great service of working out the numbers for Hartwell Hypnotherapy, which is what it was when I first opened my doors, because it was in Hartwell, Georgia, and then Healing Within. And I can't wait to have this discussion with her, and I know you're going to find it fascinating. So Felicia, thank you so much for being on today and coming in, dear friend, and running numbers.
Oh, so congratulations for this anniversary, basically, of your business. So, and what is so fascinating to me, I will be infinitely fascinated with the numbers until the day I leave this planet, because it always fascinates me how right on they are and how we can really work with them to, I don't know, to validate everything about ourselves, and about business. And for me, I find that our business has a vibe, right? I mean, it does have a resonance to it. Did it take you a while to figure out your first name, like Hartwell Hypnotherapy? Did you have like 5 choices or something like that?
I did not. The only training I've ever had in my life was a weekend of hypnotherapy. and so when God told me to take my family and move to Hartwell, Georgia, I mean, that was a command. I didn't have any skill set. I had been doing nonprofit work for, the 22 years prior to that. But there weren't really a lot of nonprofits in Hartwell that would afford me the same income and raising a family as I had. So the only thing I could do was open up a hypnotherapy and throw my plaque out, even though I only had a weekend training. And what was fascinating to me was the Sunday, I was opening up on a Monday, and the Sunday before, the Baptist minister from across the street stopped by and welcomed me to the community, because we had just moved there. I mean, we had moved there the first part of June. And so this was like 3 weeks later. It was let's get it done. And then my first client was a detective in the Hartwell Police Department. And when he walked in and introduced himself, I'm like, oh, heck, here I am in a small town with like 15 churches within a 3-mile radius. And my first client is a detective. I am in so much trouble. And he walked in and he said, my wife and I, we have a son who stutters, and we have done everything that we can possibly think of to help him with it. And just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about hypnotherapy and whether or not hypnotherapy would work. And here you are. And so the community embraced me, and that was perfect. And then it really transitioned quickly into healing within, because it didn't just stay Hartwell, within a matter of weeks, it was international.
Yes.
And, one person told 10 people, and 10 people told 30 people, and it just grew from word of mouth. And,
absolutely.
yeah.
And that's what I was going to say. What an opportunity, right? It's that fear factor that you get, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is make or break,
Exactly.
right? With
Exactly.
this person. And so if we could just kind of set the stage here in terms of numerology, because some people out there may go, I don't even know what numerology is. Like, what is it? And so basically, if you're unfamiliar with numerology, the kind I use comes from Pythagoras. I don't know, Patti, were you paying attention in math class, the Pythagorean theorem of geometry? I was not. So if you were, more power to you. But those of you out there, at least you've heard of it. It's the same guy, right? And he was a Greek mystic, a mathematician. He was into astronomy, music, all of these. He would have been kind of an interesting guy to sit down and have lunch with, right? And yet he basically posits the idea that numbers carry with them not only a quantitative value, like for counting 1, 2, 3, 4, but each number carries with it a vibration, and that's right up your alley, right? And frequency, right? So numbers carry with them that, and they contain code or data, information, influence. So it's kind of like gravity, cell phone reception, that sort of thing. We don't have to really know that it's there or believe it, for it to be operational.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the way I like to look at it is kind of like Morse code, right? If you walk into a room and you don't know Morse code and beep, 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 you just walk on through, it's static.
Yeah.
But if you know Morse code, you can stop and you can listen to what the messages are and what the information that's coming through.
Right.
Same with numerology. So we can look at your name and your birth date and formulate an entire chart for you, kind of like in astrology. And I've done that for you. And we can look at life path number, which is your life's purpose, what you've come here to do. We can look at cycles of time, all of these really interesting, very detailed information. Then we can do the same thing for your business. And I find that often people will, juggle around some names. Even it's kind of like when you're having a child, right? You have a couple names that you're mulling around, and then one day suddenly you're like, no, this is it. This is the one, right? It kind of drops in. So
exactly.
Yeah. And so I always love to look at your chart and then look at your business and how it works with you, right?
Yeah.
So for you, though, you are a 5 life path. That is, if you're only going to know one thing, and it's like knowing your astrological sun sign. So for you, you're a Leo, right?
Right.
So it's like knowing that you're a Leo. So it's a 5, and the 5 is what you're here to learn, to master, to evolve into, and to aspire towards. So you're going to have those basic characteristics or drivers that go with that, or skills, talents that go with the thematics of this number. Yes. And yet we'll also have, higher climbing walls, right, to get there. And all of us have it. It just depends on the theme song, right? The theme words, those key elements that we're here to experience and to learn. And for the 5 is, I call you the sensuous freedom seeker. And for a while you were living on a houseboat. I mean, come on.
This is true.
Right?
This is true. Right.
But the 5 is that fearless, adventurous, all about the experience. The 5 is all about doing. It's that forward momentum, nothing back in the day, right? For you
Right.
as a 5.
Right.
And
Right.
it really is all about the senses. You're here on this planet Earth to explore and experience all the tactileness, sex and food, and how things smell and how things feel on your body, you know, all of those very sensuous tactile things that this
Right.
world has to offer
Right.
is important to you. Do you have sensitivities in that? I mean, sometimes
Very
5s
much.
are very sensitive to smell, to other things of that nature.
Yes.
And so the 5 is overarchingly an agent of change. And I call you the catalyst, right? Whenever you walk into a room, it even if it's just because people are looking at you and going, oh my God, you know, how does she do all of that? Or what is it, you know, how did she get here? Or look at all of the things, look at everything she's accomplished, or all those experiences, everywhere she's gone, right?
Yeah.
And it actually pushes people into exploring into kind of, so I say the 5 is here to show others, show, not blah, 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 right? How to live their most fearless and adventurous life.
Yeah.
In that way. And then of course, on the other end of that is fear. So I find that 5s have a lot of fear, like heightened levels of strange fears that come in.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Like going into a restaurant.
Yes.
Myself, major fear.
Major fear. Isn't that
Major
fascinating?
fear. I'm fine if I'm going with someone else. But for me to go into a restaurant by myself is usually predated by a half hour of crying in my car.
Oh.
And then getting to the point where I'll go into the restaurant. And so, you know, the sons have made it, you know, fun of let's do 4 restaurants this year. So if I call them and go, I went into a restaurant, they're like so proud of you. It's unrational. It's irrational. It has no basis in anything other than the fact that I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So
totally.
there are those fear factors. And I personally believe that they're kind of some karmic elements there, right? Some things that are drawn in. And it's because the 5 is kind of lives this, what I call it, an ADHD experience. No filter.
No filter. No.
And that's probably another reason why the restaurant is difficult for you, because you have a lot, it's very difficult for 5s to filter out stimulus.
Yes.
So on the one hand, you're kind of seeking stimulus all the time, and yet you're overly sensitive to stimulus.
Yes.
So it's kind of a strange oxymoronic thing that happens.
I think that describes me well.
Okay, I love it. And it's the number of excess, it's the number of, you know, impulsiveness. And one of the things about the 5 is often there's a lot of scattered quality, a lot of, you know, I want to, it's all about how it feels.
Right.
How does it feel to me? If I feel like getting up, I'll get up. If I don't, I won't. Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And yet with your chart, there's you have that grounded element to you as well, which is a really nice counterbalance to that. But I don't want to get too involved with that, but it just gives you a bit of that. And the reason why I went into that a little bit more directly is because Hartwell hypnotherapy, since you gave me the name and also the date that it was incorporated, basically, I can run a whole chart for it, and its life path is a 5.
Oh, wow. No way.
So you created this little 5 baby, your mini me.
Oh, that's hysterical.
Which I love. And I love that. And its soul urge, its heart's desire was also the 5. And it was about catalyzing people into healing. Right. And showing them through this experience. The 5, not to be too lofty, Patti, but I kind of, you know, you have to go there occasionally. The 5, to me, the highest octave of the 5 is enlightenment, because it is the ultimate freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I say enlightenment, I don't mean in the sitting in a corner in a cave, oming, you know, and just whatever, that kind of transcendence. To me, it's enlightenment on this earth and on this planet, and being able to be enlightened enough to bring others into their higher levels of self-awareness, of spiritual evolution, whatever that looks like to them.
Right.
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 Wow.
Yeah. And so Hartwell hypnotherapy doubled up with you on that. So it was really a beautiful synergy, I find. And the expression number, the name itself, how it expresses the destiny of that for Hartwell is a 9. And that's the humanitarian number.
Right.
That is the right. That's the compassionate, that selfless service, that's giving. It's this very, it's a very sacred pathway and a very sacred number. And so I really love that. And what I love even more, if I can, even, you know, I always just get so excited because it's so cool to look at. So then when you moved into healing within, and that shifted the life path over to a number 3. The 3 is communication, broadcasting.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Expression.
Yeah.
You know, it's media.
Wow.
So I would think that at that point, you were kind of starting to move into more of a presentational, more of getting the word out there and less one-on-one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I still had one-on-one, but my
Of
neighbor,
course.
I had moved, and my neighbor had been with the National Broadcast Association. So I was doing radio and video long before anyone else was doing radio and video, because he was like, no, we need to get you on radio. And so, you know, by my probably the 25th year, I was doing radio and video where no one was doing that. So
absolutely,
it was about communication and really doing broadcast type things, not at the level we're doing right now, but certainly earlier than most people were.
Absolutely. And what I want to, you know, pick up on there, that thread, which is the 5, is that kind of forward thinking, you know, it kind of has those visionary capabilities of what's next.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you as a 5, it's always like, what's next? What's next? What's the next thing? Right. And so you were able to establish that. With healing within, the life path is a 3, the expression is a 3, you double up on that. Right. And then all the other numbers involved here are 6s. And the 6 is also visionary, but it's the nurturing energy. It's that home, family. It's very assistant oriented, supportive, very giving, self-sacrificing. It's that nurturing justice. It's just mama bear, you know, energy. But the whole, so it was nurturing people on their pathway through your creative expression, through the media aspect and element of that. And what I think is so fascinating, Patti, is that you don't have 3s in your personal chart, except you at 49 years old moved into a cycle of time in numerology called a pinnacle cycle. In numerology, we have 4 of these chunks of time that kind of denote, they're kind of like degree programs we've signed up for, and the environment we find ourselves in. And we can see how they're kind of these building blocks. We can look and see where we've been and derive some meaning around, oh, that's why that family, you know, that's why that experience, that, you know, marriage, the job, however it comes into play. It's really this beautiful way of being able to give yourself, cut yourself some slack, because we're all so hard on ourselves, right? About decisions made, but we can see where we've been and where we're headed. And for you at 49, you moved into, for the rest of life, a 3.
Oh my goodness, really?
Yeah. And so from 49 on, I would think that you started getting even more opportunities thrown your way to be, you know, to be out there, to be presenting, to be teaching, to be broadcasting, to be on TV, to do all of those things. It's almost like you can run, but you can't hide. Right.
There was a lot. I mean, that was a long time ago, 49. But there were a lot of opportunities. I was certainly traveling the world more. You know, we've reached 62 countries that we've been working in. So, there's been a lot of opportunity for speaking engagements and being on shows and so forth. And I'm attempting, when age 49 was, but I think that moved into, my book was launched in 2014. It had been written, but we moved into launching in 2014, and everything was really building up into that stage. So 49 still would have been that creative, platform. That's interesting that it moved to a 3.
Yeah. And remember that this is lifelong. So you are continuing to build and become more in alignment, or more embodied, is a good way to say it, with this. And the 3 is, I always say that if you're going to say one thing about the 3, the mantra for the 3 is, when you're laughing, you're learning. Right?
I love it.
You're not like that person who's like the sober, somber, I'm going to give you this meditation and you got to sit down and do it,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not that. It's more about engaging people on an emotional level, being able to hold that container, being able to reflect back, being able to, ultimately, at the end of the day, this period of time is about giving you opportunity, and you taking it to inspire, to uplift, to motivate through the work you're doing with the media and all of that. And then, on a personal level, it's also about your private life and with your children, with your grandchildren, with a significant other, finding a balance between work and your personal enjoyment in the world. Right? What brings you joy?
That's always been a challenge. And I have noticed in the last, I'd say 5-8 years, that it has become more pronounced, especially after the grandbabies came in, which was 9 years ago. Be 10 years this year.
But how is that possible, Patti? I know. But sorry.
I know. It's like, wow, and the 2 boys coming in so close to each other and being so twin-like. But definitely moving into, watching them and going, wow, I want what they have. I want what those kids have. Because I didn't have that playtime. So finding more playtime, and then having a granddaughter, the only girl out of the grandchildren, who just cracks me up. She's 7 right now, and she'll be 8 next January. But where the boys and I are very close. And, I remember being out of the country and coming home, and she was probably 4. So Kylan was 6, and Kylan's like, Oma, I missed you so much. You were gone for so long. And he's hugging me and everything. And I look over at the girl, and she's like, I didn't. And he got after her. He's like, Sky, that doesn't sound very nice. And she's like, well, I missed you a little. I just didn't miss you as much as him. So it's amazing to watch this dynamic with the only female grandchild, who at times will, give me that hug or a kiss or tell me she loves me. But most of the time she's just like, she's
like, I'm on my own. I'm doing it
on my own, and
well, and you had sons as well, and you didn't have a sister, did you? Did you have?
Yep.
Okay.
But we weren't close, and so then I had sons, and of course, I brought sons into the family. Daughter-in-laws are awesome, and so having this child, a great example of this is when she was 3. She went ziplining that year, and then she wanted to go parasailing when they were down at the beach, and son Dan, her dad, just kept saying, I don't think that they're going to let you parasail. And they said, well, she has to be over 30 pounds, and she was 32 pounds. So, they went up. She had a blast. She was in her own harness, dipped into the ocean and taken back up and everything. And Dan got off the dock and he's just kind of holding his head in his hands. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I just got done raising you. And now I have to start all over again. And I think that's kind of how the family, I don't think we've done her numerology yet. I don't think we've looked at what.
Oh, you will have to send that on over.
I will. And
I can guess, but yes.
But she has that definite free spirit where, she wants to explore and she doesn't know fear. And and she looks at me just kind of like, yeah, you're there. So the whole aspect of family has shifted and dating has shifted and so forth, and still being full blown into this communication broadcast platform.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me also about your overall chart is while you're a 5 life path, what I'm always looking at is to get kind of a bird's eye view, right? And to see where there are repeating numbers and where there are absences, right, is even sometimes even more telling about how things show up for someone. And you have, while you are a 5 and very much a 5, you also, to me, also show up even more as a 2, because your expression number, it's also called the destiny number in numerology, and it's like knowing your ascendant or your rising sign astrologically. It's very similar, is a number 2, and you are born on the 20th. And that has a 0 next to it. We don't talk about the 0 all that much in numerology, but I will say that it's an amplifier. So when it shows up, it's like, wow, it's done. It's giving it to you in neon. And so you show up a lot and the 2 is the love bug. The 2 is the mediator and the diplomatic one, and the one who really has a lot of ambition that resides within relationships, with family, with significant partnerships. And it is the intuitive. I mean, the 2 is highly, highly intuitive. It's the blessing and the curse. I mean, who am I talking to? You have a very ultra perception and sense in terms of your intuitive capabilities. And you've been able, it seems to me, to discipline them and to understand how they operate with you so that you're not on all the time, right?
Right.
Because but the 2 is super, super sensitive, but also it's funny, you were talking about, your grandson who's like, oh, I missed you. And the 2 wants that engagement, wants that acknowledgement, wants the love. And I would probably guess that your granddaughter has a little bit more 1 in her, which is more of that independence and stand on her own and that sort of thing. And the 1 and the 2 they kind of do a little bit of a shuffly dance because they don't get each other, they're like, I don't get how you operate. And the 2 is like, I just want a warm hug. And the 1 is like, I'm going to go do my own thing. I'll give myself a warm hug,
Right.
Yeah, it's so you've got a lot of that very loving, and what I've always noticed about you is that you also are very engaged with groups and with community. It's like, even though you do one-on-ones and all of that, from when I've known you way back, you were doing group work quite a bit. And that's a very 2 thing, to understand the power of community and to get a lot of satisfaction, gratification from having that kind of engagement. You're the number in numerology that wants win-win, right?
Yes.
The mediator. But the funny thing is, now let's see how this shows up for you, is because the 2's learning about relationships, right? Learning how to do this and learning at the end of the day, not to be taken advantage of by others.
Right.
And most numerologists will say learning how not to be a doormat, but I don't really like that. I don't like that thought. But it's more like learning really in our age of kind of Brene Brown, talking about the vulnerabilities and boundaries and all of that, really on that high level lesson, life lessons of understanding who you are under all situations, because the two is often kind of more of a shapeshifter, the pleaser. Who do you want me to be? How should I show up? Because you are so intuitive that you're getting everybody else, you're getting what they're throwing down. But the issue is they're never there. It's not reciprocated, and you don't know why.
Yeah.
Early on, right?
Right.
And you're like, what? I should, and so the thing that 2 does the best, and I have 2 in my own chart, which is give, and then withdraw, resentment.
Yeah.
And when it's over, it is, that's it.
When the door's closed, it's closed. Yeah. Yeah. There's no in between. It doesn't crack back open.
It doesn't crack back open. And yet the gift of that is to begin to learn how to, and it sounds so therapeutic, but hey, that's what life is really, is learning because we know, whoever has those 2s, they know when they're offended, when it doesn't work for them, when their feelings are hurt, but usually they're kind of waiting for someone to notice.
Yes.
And because it's so obvious, right? Because you're so tuned in, but other people aren't. And so it comes to a point of learning how to go, hey, you know what? When we had that conversation and you said that, it really hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And blah, blah, blah. To diffuse it, because usually 2s don't feel, in some ways, there's a lot of insecurity underneath there that comes from past trauma in childhood.
And, being vulnerable for it too. I mean, I think that's key. And certainly in relationships, I've developed this 24-hour notice. If something is said and I'm not quite sure whether I'm offended or I'm hurt or I'm whatever, I give the 24-hour notice of, okay, this is up for me. Let me think about it so that I can present it back to you in a way where we can dialogue instead of me just shutting down. And that's worked really well. And
isn't it great to be older?
I know it, or we can figure these things out. Yeah.
If we would have only known it when we were in our 30s, even.
Oh, you would.
Yeah. And what's fascinating also numerologically is that your maturity number, this is the life path and the expression added together. So as we, the idea is, as we're developing both aspects of ourselves and bringing them together as we gain in age and vintage and maturity and wisdom.
Beautiful words.
Yes, the destination point is the maturity, like where we're maturing into. And for you, it's a 7, and that's the spiritual. It's a very, very spiritually based time of. It's a very deep. I don't even know how. You kind of have to go way in the ethers to even talk about the 7. I mean, if you think about 7th heaven, but it's very analytical, very much this melding of the right brain, left brain. So the analysis, the information, and then bringing in the unknown. Yeah. And merging and melding that. And this as a maturity for you kind of kicked in early 40s and beyond. But it's always learning, always processing, always asking the bigger questions. And it's the teacher of wisdom, really. So I mean, how it all shows up for you and how you appear to me kind of pretty much coalesces pretty nicely.
Wow. So much information in a name, in a number. I mean, just tremendous. And I've always loved how you present the knowledge, because it's understandable. And I've never known you to be off. I've never, in those few times, I know when the grandbabies, when the boys were born, I had you do a reading for them. But, you're someone who, it kind of goes with astrology, I think, numerology. The information is presented only as well as the person presenting it, how intuitive they are. how are they reading that information? And you are so intuitive in taking that number and understanding what the person that you're reading, whatever it is you're reading at that point, you're so on point.
Well, I really appreciate that, because I do love the tool. I think we find our ways of opening the doors of our own intuitive language, right? How does that operate for us? And I'm sure that, I've taken some workshops from you and classes, and it is exploring that pathway. And each one of us is, there's obviously some similarities that we can talk about across the board, and yet it shows up for each of us differently. And it's just wonderful to find that tool that works for each of us, and it's there, whether it's numerology or not, it's something. So I love that.
How fascinating. Thank you so much for going to all of that work and that effort. And folks, I know you're going to love her as much as I do. It's FeliciaBender.com. And we'll actually air this episode on the anniversary evening of the company, of the 27th year, because it does seem to feel like it's important this year that things are branching and moving and creating all sorts of wonderful new arenas. And you're right. I like to explore. Let me just see how this feels. Let me just come here and see how it feels.
And numerologically next, this is a great organizing time, getting things already. Numerologically, 2023 for you personally is a very great, it's an 8. So it is business expansion, launching time, implementation, getting it really solidified and out the door. So it's yay.
Beautiful. Yay.
Yeah.
I appreciate you so much.
You too, Patti. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to see you always.
Thank you again, my dear friend. I appreciate you.